everyone, it's Anne from the I Thought I Knew How podcast. I'm just going to quickly show you how to work an Afterthought thumb. So this is Harriet's fingerless gloves. I'm actually going to knit them with the glove addition to the pattern, but I am to the point now where I need to put in my placeholder for the Afterthought thumb, so I'm going to show you how to start doing that. Now on the pattern there is a red line indicating where you need to put in your placeholder stitches, and I have already knitted to that point, so I'm 3 stitches in on the back of the palm. I'm working on the back of the hand. I'm working on the right glove, so the next 7 stitches need to be worked on waste yarn. I am working with Jamieson and Smith Shetland wool, which is a very grippy wool, and when I come back and pull those placeholder stitches out, I want to be able to pull them out really easily. I don't want it to be gripping with each other, especially since I'm hoping to finish this quickly, but if it ends up in a knitting bag for a really long time, they may actually start felting together just a little bit, and it might just, might become problematic. So I have here some scrap yarn that is a superwash wool sock yarn. So it's got some nylon in it. It's not going to grip to the Shetland wool as I work. So to work those stitches, I'm just going to hold that to the back, and I'm going to work my 7 stitches that are my placeholders. And I also want to make sure that when I pick my yarn, lost my thread there. When I pick my yarn, I want to make sure that it's in a nice bright contrasting color to what I'm working with, just to make it easier when the time comes to remove it again. How many have I done there? I was talking and I lost track. One more. Okay. Now I am going to go back and purl these stitches back to where I started from. Four, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now I'm going to work these stitches again, this time continuing with my pattern. So my next 7 stitches are, let me get in there, are a red, gray, red, and then 3 gray and a red. And then I'll go ahead and just do a few more. So I have 1 more red, 1 more gray, and I'm going to stop there for a second. And I'm going to turn this around, and I will grab my scissors. And I'm just going to snip that. And I'm just going to tie a little knot right there, just to keep that scrap yarn from going anywhere. Now I'm going to continue knitting as normal before I come back and deal with this. It really is an Afterthought thumb. This is all secure. It's not going anywhere. I can finish the glove and come back and know that that will be ready for me to pick up and work on. So that's what I'm going to do. So when I have gotten to that point, I will come back and pick up from there. Okay, everyone, I am back. I have knit the gloves as far as the point where I'm supposed to start with the fingers. However, I'm going to deal with the Afterthought thumb first because I have fairly large hands, and so I want to make sure that I can knit the fingers to the proper length. And in order to do that, I first need to be able to knit the thumb to the proper length, so I can then put my hand into the glove properly and test out the fingers as I'm knitting them along. So I'm going to skip ahead to the Afterthought thumb directions. And the way that the pattern has been written, we're going to pick up the stitches first, and then we're going to remove this waste yarn that we have there. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to look at the stitches, and my first stitch is actually right here, and it's knitted into this stitch down below. And I'm just going to pick up this stitch by picking up one side of the V in the row below. And then I'll move on to the next stitch and pick up one side of the V in the row below that. And I'm going to continue doing that across until I have all 7 of the stitches on my needle. Okay, so there's my first 7. Now I'm going to repeat this up here on the top, picking up one side of the V in the row above. So starting with the red, the gray, red, and just work my way across. Whoops, is that? Yep, that's, it looked like I was picking up the other side of the same stitch for a moment there. Okay, so I have 7 stitches on my bottom needle, 7 stitches on my top needle, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the waste yarn now. So you can see I used a nice contrasting yarn. It's just a little bit of sock yarn that I had lying around, and I tied a knot in the back, so I've removed that now, and I will just unpick it from the front, working my way across. So I have my 7 stitches on the bottom, 7 stitches on the top. You can see these single red stitches aren't properly anchored because they are just single stitches and they just look like yarn overs right now. I'm going to have to be careful as I go back to make sure that I stitch into those properly. Okay, so the instructions say that as we knit our Afterthought thumb, we are supposed to do it in color A, which is the darkest gray. And we need to pick up and knit a stitch, or just pick up, we need to knit a stitch at the beginning and end of each needle, and that will take us up to 9 stitches on each needle, 18 stitches total. I am opting to use my color C because my color A is getting kind of sparse, and I'm a little worried if I do the fingers all in color A that I will not have enough to do a full second glove. So I'm going to do my thumb in color C. I'm going to knit the other hand and do the thumb in color C, and I'll see how much I have left of color A at that point, whether I'm going to do my fingers in color A as well, or if I'll do all my fingers in color C. I would prefer to do my fingers in color A, but again, I do have large hands with long fingers, and I'm a little worried that I may run low or even run out. So I'm opting for color C instead, and I'm the boss of my own knitting, so I get to make that call. So I'm going to start knitting here between the top and bottom stitches, and I need to pick up a stitch in that gap. So I'm just going to go in here, and you can see I have this little bar here. I'm going to go into that bar, and I'm going to leave myself a long enough tail that I can weave it in later. I'm just going to hold it in place like that and do my first stitch through that bar. So that's my additional stitch at the beginning of my round. And now I'm just going to work across this needle And when I get to the end, I'm going to repeat that process. So I'm going to look here, and I can see I have like a side of a stitch here. I'll go into that for my picked up stitch. So now you can see I have 9 stitches going across. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the top needle. I'm going to look for a place that makes sense to pick up a stitch here, and I think I'm going to go into this gray, no, I think I'll go into this red stitch here and just yarn over. There we go. Now remember, I have this odd unanchored red stitch here from before. I'm going to treat it as a stitch. Whoops, I split the yarn. I'm going to treat it as a stitch and bring it to the end and pull it off the needle. Okay, and now that's going to look anchored when I do my next stitch. See, it's back to looking like a proper stitch again. So I'll do these 3 grays, and then I'm back to one of those unanchored reds. Just work it like a stitch. And when you do the next stitch over, you can see that red stitch is back to looking like a proper knit stitch again. And now I need to find one more spot. That's my beginning tail. That does not want to stay out of the way. I'm just going to go into the side of that stitch there. Yarn over. There we go. So now I have picked up all the stitches that I need for my Afterthought thumb, and I'm just going to turn back and I'll work stockinette in this direction, go to the next needle, stockinette back, and I'm just going to remember that I'm not going to worry about putting a stitch marker in or anything. I'm just going to remember that this side, the thumb side, is where I started, and count my rounds that way. And really, I'm not even going to count my rounds. I'm just going to keep going until it looks about long enough for my thumb, and I'll put the glove on and test it out and see if it's long enough, and then I'll work the decreases as the pattern suggests. So I hope that helps some of you who are needing to do the Afterthought thumb, especially with that weirdness that happens because of the single Fair Isle stitches up here, to know how to get that back on your needles. Thank you for joining us for the MRI Mackers Knit Along. If you have not yet joined us, or if you're coming to this late, there is still time to help the MRI Mackers reach their goal to raise enough money for an MRI scanner for the Shetland Islands. So please visit mrimackers.com to learn more about that. Thanks, everyone.